If you're thinking about living in Encinitas or Carlsbad, you're going to want to stay tuned. We're getting into some of the differences between the two cities. A lot of folks who are looking in these areas look at Carlsbad and Encinitas. And so if you're thinking about moving out here, you're going to want to know what is different between them, because there's a lot of differences too. So we're going to break it down into 5 different categories. And the 5 categories are going to be vibe and atmosphere. We're going to do community and lifestyle. It's going to have a little bit of schools in there as well. We're going to do convenience and beach access. We're going to get into some things that are super important, especially if you're getting a house out here, if you're looking to purchase a home, housing styles, and then we're going to get into kind of cost of living and housing prices and how those differ between each one.
So we're starting with vibe and atmosphere. Let's get into Encinitas first. It is a place that I love. I grew up in Encinitas, lived there for most of my life, and it has kind of maybe the quintessential Southern California beach vibe. It's just kind of, out of all of the parts of San Diego, I'd say Encinitas has that beachy surfer vibe more than a lot of other spots. So if you're looking for laid back, if you're looking for just a little bit more eclectic, different, not so cookie cutter, Encinitas is a great option. Leucadia forever has been known for keeping everything funky, keeping Leucadia funky. And although that has changed a little, there are sidewalks now to walk on and all that, it still has that feel with a lot of the shops, restaurants, bars, all that stuff down there too.
And it seems like between Encinitas and Carlsbad, like a lot of people who live in Encinitas are obviously proud to live there, but also seem to have lived there a lot longer, while Carlsbad seems a little bit newer. It seems like, you know, there's a few more transplants in there, so there are a few differences in that aspect as well.
Let's get into the vibe and atmosphere of Carlsbad. Like I mentioned, just a little bit more cookie cutter than Encinitas. You have a ton of master plan communities. You have Calavera Hills, you have Ibresi Ranch, Rancho Carrillo, a couple different La Costas, La Costa Oaks, La Costa Valley. There are just a ton of suburban master plan communities within Carlsbad.
And part of that vibe with Carlsbad is it is a little more touristy. There's a few more attractions there. There's a few more things to do. So you have, like, if you visited, you just have like the walkable area downtown Carlsbad, but you got Legoland and a few of the bigger resorts. You have the Omni La Costa, you have Aviara, which is a resort. That whole area of Aviara actually is kind of like a resort style feel, but I would say a lot more tourism and stuff going into there, even more hotels and more areas to stay within Carlsbad. Encinitas, there's not a ton. You'll find some little boutique hotels here and there. You'll find Alila Maria, which is actually right on the border of Carlsbad and Encinitas, a newer resort, which is, I would say, the biggest resort in Encinitas and probably the only resort in Encinitas. But you get a little bit more of that touristy vibe, a little bit more, you know, during summer times, a lot more people are visiting Carlsbad. And it's just due to, like I said, more hotels, more places to stay, more things to do within that Carlsbad area. And just a little bit about the vibe of where we're standing right now. I'm not saying Encinitas doesn't have this, but this is what we're looking at. We're at a park right here in Carlsbad. We're at Poinsettia Park filming right now. But up here, there's like a mommy's group pushing around strollers, doing some exercises. Back here, the playground is packed. There's some sports fields down there. They're doing like a clinic or something. What, they're kicking some field goals.
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on just in this little area. So, you know, even on what day is it? Friday at 10:22. You got some energy going on here in Carlsbad. And as a quick reminder, as much as we love making these videos for you guys, we'd also love to help you with your real estate needs. So if you are thinking about moving out here, maybe it's Carlsbad or Encinitas, feel free to reach out, call, text, or email. We are the guys who answer the call, text, and emails. And so screenshot that number. We want you guys to reach out so we can start that conversation. We'll hop on a Zoom call, get you dialed in, and we get even more in depth into these neighborhoods and see if these are gonna work for you. Now hopping into community and lifestyle. Let's start with Encinitas. Cassidy mentioned a little more of that beachy vibe, a little bit more laid back. There's not a ton to do there as far as like bigger activities. I mean, your location is great, so you could travel north, south, wherever you want to go. And within Encinitas, there's actually 4 different communities where you have New Encinitas, which is like the newer area. That's where you're gonna find like El Camino Real corridor, which we'll cover here in a sec. That's where you're gonna find the shopping and whatnot. And once again, it's a little bit newer section. You're gonna have Old Encinitas, that's that downtown area. That's where you're gonna have the walkability. That's where you're gonna have there's not a ton of turnover right in that little area just because people have lived there for a long time, but you're gonna find a mix of, we'll get into houses here in a little bit. You're gonna find Leucadia, which he mentioned, and then Livin, which is like a rural section of Encinitas. So there's actually a bunch of different little communities within Encinitas. And within each one, you're gonna have different lifestyles. So if you're living in a Livin, you're going out there because it's more rural. You're gonna have some space. You can have equestrian, so you're gonna find horse properties. You're gonna find a lot of entertainment on your property because you do have the space. So pools, sports courts, even within houses, you're gonna find some really cool amenities as well. And then once you get into New Encinitas, we're going from east to west. So Livin, New Encinitas is going to be a little more suburban, so you're going to find some little green belts, you're going to find some HOAs with pools and whatnot. Once you get to Leucadia, which is the northern section of Encinitas, and that's where you're going to find actually the Leucadia Farmers Market I think it's Saturdays. I'm going to go Saturdays or Sundays, but you're going to find that over there. You're going to find like really unique properties. I think some of the most unique, some of the most character in all of Encinitas. And then Old Encinitas, that's where you're going to find that section of the community is the downtown area. So if you want to be anywhere that has some action going on, that's going to be the spot. The rest of the areas are pretty quiet.
And then as for lifestyle for Encinitas, you have just a lot of outdoor time. So you've got great beaches, you've got a lot of activities at the water too. You got surfing, stand-up paddleboarding, boogie boarding. You've got a lot of things you can do at the beach. Just take a walk. Kind of that active lifestyle of just being outside, getting some fresh air, taking some hikes, some walks. There's great opportunities for a lot of that in Encinitas. And then kind of just pivoting to Carlsbad, it's kind of the same. Carlsbad has a lot of that outdoor activity. It's probably one of the things they're most, like their closest similarity is there is a lot of outdoor activities to do. Carlsbad just has more of it because it's bigger and just has more beaches, more long stretches where you can walk. And it has boardwalks, which Encinitas doesn't have, which is really cool, kind of going from Cannon all the way up in the village in Carlsbad. So great opportunities for a lot of walking.
And a little bit about community vibe in Carlsbad. You're gonna find movies in the parks in certain times of the year. You're gonna find concerts in the park. You're gonna find farmers markets downtown. You're gonna find other events downtown, Flicks by the Fountain downtown Carlsbad, and then spread out throughout the town. And it seems like they have, well, it's a bigger area, so there's more parks and stuff to spread out to, but it seems like you're gonna find more of those type of events. Back to Encinitas real quick, you are gonna find some awesome events that they throw. They have the street fair, Carlsbad does as well. During the summers, they've been doing concerts at the beach actually, and then they have the Switchfoot Bro-Am, which is like one of the biggest concerts at Moonlight Beach right there in Encinitas. So they do have their events as well.
Free concerts.
Free concerts, yeah, right on the beach. Who plays there?
Switchfoot,
yes, the Switchfoot Bro-Am, that's what it's called. So they have that, and then back up to Carlsbad, you're just gonna find a lot of those events as well throughout the year. I would say definitely more, but once again, the population is probably about double of Encinitas, so that's partially why you have that there.
One more part of the community here in Carlsbad is there are a lot more shopping centers. Chris mentioned that Encinitas has El Camino Real, which has pretty much everything you need. You've got Target, you've got Home Depot, and a ton of other shops and restaurants up and down that.
We're gonna cover that more in the next section.
That's right. And Carlsbad just has a lot of bigger shopping centers. It has the outlets. It has the Carlsbad Mall at the very north side of Carlsbad. And then one other bonus thing about both communities is the school districts. So Carlsbad and Encinitas both are really well known for having very, very good school districts. They're very similar when you're looking at scores and all that, but there are some things you need to know. Carlsbad's pretty easy. The homes that feed into Carlsbad High School go K through 12, so it's just one district for elementary through high school, so it kind of keeps it pretty simple. And then as you go to Encinitas, you have Encinitas proper. You have Encinitas School District, which is K through 6th, and then you have 7th through 12th is San Diego Union School District, which is a pretty big school district going down into Del Mar, Carmel Valley, a few areas down there. Encinitas and San Diego school districts are a little bit complicated because the southern portion of Carlsbad feeds into both of those school districts as well, and then also there's a big section of Old La Costa that feeds into San Marcos School District. So, and Rancho Carrillo feeds into San Marcos School District. So it's a little bit more complicated. We have a lot of videos where we talk a little bit more about it in detail. But if you have questions about schools in that kind of lower portion of Carlsbad, southern portion of Carlsbad, definitely hit us up.
And most people, like we're working with some clients right now who are kind of pondering Encinitas or Carlsbad. They live in Carlsbad right now. They're renting. And one thing that they are thinking about as schools is they don't necessarily want to go to Encinitas schools. The reason being, not because they're bad, not because there's anything wrong with them, is because their kids are currently going to Carlsbad schools. And so they just want to stay there and stay within that. So that's like, that would be one of the reasons why you're going to choose this one or that one.
Let's hop into convenience and beach access. So Encinitas, I already mentioned a little bit, has a ton of infrastructure down El Camino Real, which is kind of that central road that cuts Encinitas kind of in half, maybe in a third, something like that. But around this shopping area, you have New Encinitas, which is a ton of housing. So for all of this housing, it is super convenient. You can jump out and get to the grocery store. You've got Trader Joe's, you have CVS, you have pretty much everything you need right in that corridor where you don't have to leave.
Targets, Home Depots, Kohl's, Bed Bath & Beyond. No, not that one out of business. What's the other one? Home Goods, that's the one. Home Goods is there. Some Starbucks, obviously all that stuff too. Sprouts. There's a lot right there. And this is all within probably about 10 minutes from most places within Encinitas.
And then other than this kind of section of Encinitas, there are a couple one-off little shopping centers, one off Santa Fe and Encinitas, a couple random ones. But for the most part, there's not much other infrastructure other than just restaurants and shops kind of going down the Coast Highway as well. Where you go to Carlsbad, like I mentioned, there's a lot of options. There's the Forum in Carlsbad, which is right kind of on the border of Encinitas and Carlsbad. There is the company stores up in kind of that central area of Carlsbad. There's Costco up there, which is a big draw up in that area, that neck of the woods. And then there's just a lot of other shopping centers within Carlsbad.
There's a mall to the north. You got La Costa Town Square. I don't know the one that by Black Rail. There's that little shopping center.
Yeah, that's also La Costa, a different La Costa one. You have a lot of options because there's a lot more housing in Carlsbad, so there's a lot more infrastructure as well.
And then on the convenience train, we're hopping into beach access because if you're moving out here, a lot of people are moving out here because of the beach and they want easy access to the beach. You can't really go wrong with either one. Both are beautiful. You're going to find your spots. And once we hop into Encinitas, one of the biggest things is kind of the accessibility or lack thereof. You have Moonlight Beach, big beach. That's like the main beach in Encinitas. Parking lot at the top. Obviously, you're getting busy in summers and weekends and stuff, but pretty super easy. Other than that, as you go south from there, you're going to find bluffs. As you go north from there, you're going to find bluffs. So there's a few little trails, not trails, there is a trail that beacons, but there's some other stairs going down. And then as you get to the south, you have Swamis. And they did recently actually just added a ton of sand. So it extended these beaches because it used to be like Moonlight, and then once you go north or south, it was like rocks or bluffs or like little tiny areas, but they pumped in a ton of sand to make it a little bit more accessible. But once you get out of there, like I said, it's if you're just going like to hang out with the kids, the bluff areas aren't great. There's some good surf breaks and stuff in there, but like Moonlight is probably going to be your go-to. As you go into Carlsbad, there's just a lot more of those areas. So you're starting off in the south at Ponto, big open area, big parking lot. You got bathrooms there. One of the best beaches in Carlsbad for, especially if you got kids. Park there, bathrooms, walk right on the beach. It's great. And then as you go up, Tamarack, pretty popular beach. Some of the accessibility, one negative about there's more coastline to access in Carlsbad. I think Encinitas has 6 miles, Carlsbad has 7, or vice versa, one or the other, because you're adding Cardiff into Encinitas as well. But I think there's more easy access in Carlsbad. But with that, there's not a ton of parking, especially when you get into the north section. Like if you're going, we went to a birthday party and trying to park, I ended up having to park like back in the neighborhood, which isn't too uncommon, you know, like a 5-10 minute walk down the beach. It wasn't too bad, but especially during those times, you're gonna find that. But I think there's more actual beach, there's more areas to go to the beach, and just more, I would say convenience-wise, it's much better.
If you're bringing a wagon or two full of stuff, Carlsbad is your jam. Next up is housing styles. It is, if you take it down to basics, pretty simple. Encinitas, you have character, you have custom. Carlsbad, you have a lot of just stucco boxes. So a lot of those kind of get a little more into detail. Encinitas has a lot of communities, Old Encinitas, Leucadia, Livin, where you have a lot of custom home, either like beach bungalows if you're in Leucadia, or Old Encinitas, or if you're out in Livin, a little bit more of that ranch style, more land, but it's just custom. So you have a lot more kind of character in the housing. Now we do have a little bit more of this custom feel in a couple of neighborhoods in Carlsbad. It's just not as prevalent as it is in Encinitas. You have Old La Costa, which does have some of those older homes. You also have Old Carlsbad up to the north, kind of near the village and east. You see a lot of houses on Highland Drive, where you have big lots, custom houses. Still some of those like beach bungalows, but a lot of them have been either torn down, additions added, completely remodeled, but that is kind of the character portion of Carlsbad.
And if you get, like, when we have clients reaching out and we're bringing up the map, we're showing them, you know, the difference. Okay, here's what you get here, here's what you get here. There's usually a lot more homes that do pop up in Carlsbad, because that we'll get into the pricing a little bit too, but there's also just more area. So there's just more options in that section. And even though there is a lot of master plan, some of the older ones, like in those 70s and 80s, some of those neighborhoods, obviously over the years have had some turnaround. And so some of those, even though they might kind of look, you know, like the other house next door on the outside, maybe the inside's like totally remodeled, you'll find a lot of that in a few areas of Carlsbad as well. Now jumping into housing prices and the cost of living, both, well, one of the biggest cost of living is going to be your housing payment, right? So let's just jump into that. Housing prices in Carlsbad versus Encinitas. Carlsbad's going to be more affordable. If you're looking at your search and you're like, here's a house in Encinitas, here's a house in Carlsbad, relatively the same size, relatively, you know, similar condition, you're going to find usually the Carlsbad house is going to be, we like to just put a number on it, like $100,000 less, which it varies, obviously.
Even crossing like one street,
yeah,
crossing Livin Road, you see $100,000 difference. I think the biggest factor between housing prices in Carlsbad and Encinitas is, first of all, Encinitas is smaller. It doesn't have as big of an area that is affordable. A lot of kind of that coastal Encinitas, where there's a bunch of housing, is expensive. It is just, you're close to the ocean. It is more expensive to live in that section. Carlsbad doesn't have a ton of that coastal section, so prices kind of are down just because of that. There's not a ton of oceanfront. There are a couple of pockets, but not a ton of it. And then also Carlsbad has a ton of just a big range of housing. So there's still sections of Carlsbad where you can get into a condo for $650,000. Encinitas doesn't have that anymore. 10 years ago, maybe, but Carlsbad, you can get into a condo for pretty affordable, and then it runs the gamut to oceanfront up to, what, $20 million in Tiburon area. So there's like a lot of different options in Carlsbad, and it just kind of creates that affordability factor. There's specific neighborhoods that we always talk about. Calavera has just tended to stay a little bit more affordable. It's an inland portion of Carlsbad.
And we mentioned cost of living, but if you guys want the full cost of living video, I'll pop it up right here, so, or right there, one of the sides. It'll be up there. Go check that out. It's like cost of living for all of San Diego, so you get a better idea. Biggest cost we're talking about right now is housing prices. But as we're going through this, if you guys are thinking about moving out here, as a quick reminder, we are a real estate team right here in San Diego. So if you're thinking about moving, you got to reach out, call, text, email. That number's popping up right now. Let's start that conversation, get you dialed in, and figure out if either of these areas are going to work. If not, maybe we give you some more options, but feel free to reach out because we got your back when making the move here in San Diego.